At St. Maria High School, a shy Filipino girl named Althea walked through the school gates with her small backpack and worn-out shoes. Every morning felt like a test she didn't sign up for. Her classmates came from wealthy families, always showing off their new phones, shiny shoes, and designer bags. Althea, on the other hand, had only one pair of shoes that her mother patched up so many times they barely held together. The other students laughed whenever she passed by. Some whispered, others didn't even bother to hide their mockery. "Look, it's the mountain girl again," one of the girls said, and the others giggled. Althea tried to ignore them, focusing on her dream, singing. Music was her comfort, her escape from the world that constantly reminded her of what she didn't have. One day, during music class, their teacher, Mrs. Reyes, announced that everyone would perform a song for their upcoming school program. The room filled with excitement. The popular students began planning elaborate performances. But Althea froze in her seat. Singing in front of people who always made fun of her felt like walking into a storm. Still, something inside her whispered to try. That night, she practiced softly under her breath, but her voice cracked from nervousness. The next morning, her classmates mocked her again. "Are you going to sing, Althea?" One asked sarcastically. "Maybe she'll scare the audience away," another added. She tried to smile, pretending their words didn't hurt, but deep down, she wanted to disappear. When her turn finally came, she stood in front of the class, gripping the microphone tightly. Her heart pounded so fast she thought everyone could hear it. The room was filled with whispers and laughter. "Let's see what the poor girl can do," someone said. The music started, and Althea opened her mouth, but her voice trembled. The laughter grew louder. Tears filled her eyes, and she lowered her head, unable to continue. Mrs. Reyes gently told her to sit down and try again next time. The humiliation burned deep. That day, Althea sat alone at lunch, replaying the moment in her mind. She could still hear their laughter. But something inside her refused to give up. She promised herself that one day, they would all hear her real voice, the one that came from her heart, not her fear. That evening, Althea walked the long road back home to her small bamboo hut on the edge of the village. Her mother, a tired but loving woman, greeted her with a smile even though her hands were sore from washing clothes all day. Althea sat beside her and quietly told her what had happened at school. Her mother listened, her face soft and understanding. "My daughter," she said gently, "people will always talk, but don't let their words define who you are. When you sing, sing for yourself, not for them." Those words stayed with Althea like a warm light in the dark. Later that night, when everyone in the village had gone to sleep, Althea walked down to the nearby river with her small flashlight. The moon reflected softly on the water. She sat on a rock and began to sing quietly, letting her emotions flow. Her voice sounded different, stronger, freer, as if the river itself was listening. Her little dog, Chaco, sat beside her, wagging his tail. She closed her eyes and imagined standing on a real stage, where people cheered instead of laughed. Each night after that, she returned to the same spot to practice. Her voice grew purer, filled with emotion and soul. One evening, an old man passing by stopped to listen. He stood silently until she finished, then said, "Child, your voice is special. Never stop singing." Althea smiled shyly, feeling seen for the first time. Back at school, nothing had changed. The bullies still mocked her, calling her the singing beggar. But Althea no longer felt small. She knew something they didn't. Her voice had power. She began singing softly during lunch breaks, lost in her world, unaware that people were starting to notice. A few students even stopped teasing and started listening. But others grew jealous and planned something cruel. They wanted to record her secretly and post it online as a joke. They thought it would be funny to embarrass her again. What they didn't know was that their plan would soon make Althea famous, and the same voice they once mocked would touch millions of hearts across the world. It was a sunny afternoon when Althea sat alone in the school garden, humming softly while writing lyrics in her notebook. Her melody floated in the air, innocent and heartfelt. She didn't know that behind the bushes, 3 girls were quietly filming her with a phone. They giggled as they whispered, "This will be hilarious. Let's post it tonight." They uploaded the video on social media with the cruel caption, "Poor mountain girl trying to sing." Within minutes, the post began getting comments, but not the kind they expected. People started sharing it, amazed by her raw, emotional voice. "Who is this girl?" one user wrote. "She sounds like an angel." Another commented, "I got chills hearing her sing." Overnight, the video exploded across the internet, reaching hundreds of thousands of views. The next morning, Althea walked into class unaware of what had happened. Everyone stared at her. Some whispered, some smiled awkwardly. She thought they were making fun of her again and kept her head down. But this time, something was different. Even her teacher looked at her with surprise. During break time, one of her classmates approached and said, "You're famous. Your video's all over the internet." Althea froze in disbelief. "What video?" she asked. The girl showed her the post. At first, Althea's heart sank, seeing the caption meant to humiliate her. But when she read the comments, her eyes widened. People from all over were praising her voice, calling it pure and heavenly. She couldn't believe it. What was meant to shame her had turned into something beautiful. By the end of the day, reporters began calling the school, asking to interview the mystery singer. The head principal called Althea into his office, his usual stern face now replaced with a forced smile. "Congratulations, Althea," he said. "You've brought attention to our school." The same students who laughed at her before now wanted selfies with her. The girls who posted the video deleted their account out of embarrassment, unable to face her. When Althea returned home, she found her mother sitting outside, holding her old phone. "Anik," her mother said, smiling with tears in her eyes, "the whole world heard your voice." Althea covered her mouth in shock, then hugged her mother tightly. For the first time, she felt seen, not as the poor girl, but as a singer who touched people's hearts. Days later, her story was featured on local television. People called her the hidden voice of Manila. Althea remained humble, helping her mother with chores and singing by the river every night. But fate had even bigger plans. One morning, a letter arrived in the mail addressed to her. It was from the producers of Philippines Got Talent. They had seen her viral video and wanted her to audition live in front of the judges. Althea couldn't believe her eyes. Her mother cried, saying, "This is your dream, Althea. Go show them who you are." But they faced one problem: they didn't have enough money for the bus fare to Manila. When the villagers heard, they gathered to help. The old man who once called her voice a gift handed her a few pesos. The local store owner gave her rice and water for the trip. Everyone contributed something small, and soon, they had enough. On the morning of the audition, Althea wore a simple white dress her mother had sewn from old fabric. She held her mother's hand tightly as they boarded the bus. The ride was long and bumpy, but her heart was full of hope. When she stepped onto the grand stage, the bright lights and the huge audience made her knees tremble. A famous judge named Mark Santos asked gently, "What's your name, sweetheart?" Althea answered softly, "I'm Althea from a small village in the Philippines." The audience clapped, sensing her sincerity. As the music began, Althea closed her eyes and sang the same song she once sang alone by the river. Her voice filled the theater, carrying both pain and beauty. The crowd grew silent, hanging on every note. By the time she hit the final note, the entire hall erupted in applause. The judges stood, their eyes filled with tears. Mark pressed the golden buzzer, sending a shower of golden confetti over her. Althea covered her face, overwhelmed by emotion. The audience chanted her name as her mother cried in the crowd. From being mocked in a classroom to standing on the biggest stage in the country, Althea had finally proven that dreams born from pain can shine brighter than gold. Golden confetti floated through the air as Althea stood frozen, her hands trembling and tears running down her cheeks. The audience roared with cheers, shouting her name while the golden buzzer lights surrounded her. Her mother rushed from the crowd, hugging her tightly as the judges stood applauding. One of them said, "You're not just a singer, you're a story of hope." It was a moment that changed her life forever. Overnight, her performance became the #1 trending video online. People from around the world watched her golden buzzer moment, reacting with tears and admiration. News channels, vloggers, and even international artists reposted her clip, calling her the Filipino angel. Her followers grew by the thousands, and offers started pouring in. For the first time in her life, Althea felt what it meant to be truly seen and loved for who she was. Back at her school, things were completely different. The same students who once mocked her now lined up to take pictures. The principal proudly displayed her photo on the bulletin board with the title, Our Star of St. Maria High. Even the girls who had recorded her without permission approached her in tears, apologizing for what they had done. Althea smiled kindly and said, "It's okay. Maybe if you hadn't done it, I wouldn't be here today." Her forgiveness surprised them, but it showed who she really was, a girl with a kind heart that fame couldn't change. Her teacher, Mrs. Reyes, hugged her and said, "You showed them that real success comes from courage." Soon, television networks invited her to guest on talk shows, and she sang live for millions of viewers. She used her earnings to fix their small bamboo house, buy her mother new clothes, and send help to other struggling kids in her village. Despite the sudden fame, Althea never forgot her roots. She still sang by the river every weekend, just like before, only now with children from the neighborhood joining in. One night, she sat with her mother, looking up at the stars. "Mama," she said softly, "I want to use my voice to help others like me." Her mother smiled proudly and replied, "That's why God gave it to you, Anik." Months later, Althea returned to the Philippines Got Talent stage for the grand finale. The theater was filled with lights and cameras, but her heart was calm. She sang an emotional original song she had written called, Voice of Hope. Her lyrics spoke of her journey, from being laughed at for her dreams to proving that even the smallest voice can echo around the world. The crowd was moved to tears, and when the song ended, the applause was thunderous. She didn't just win the competition, she won the hearts of millions. As the confetti fell again, she realized that her dream was no longer just about fame, it was about inspiring others to never give up. A few months after the show, Althea released her first album, which sold thousands of copies across the Philippines and even reached listeners overseas. Her music videos trended on YouTube, and she received an invitation to perform at a global charity concert in Los Angeles. It felt surreal. Her mother traveled with her, holding her hand as they walked through the airport for the first time. On the night of the concert, Althea stood backstage, wearing a beautiful white gown. The lights dimmed, and the host introduced her as the voice that touched the world. When she walked onto the massive stage, she looked out at thousands of glowing lights from the audience. She took a deep breath and began to sing. Her voice soared, pure and emotional, reaching every heart in the room. As she finished, the crowd gave her a standing ovation that seemed to last forever. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered into the microphone, "This is for every kid who was ever told they couldn't dream." Back home, her village gathered around an old television to watch her performance. Her mother wiped her eyes, smiling proudly. Althea had gone from being mocked in a classroom to shining on the world stage. She had proven that poverty could never silence passion, and that even the smallest voice could change the world when it sings from the heart.